Hello, hi everyone. My name is Preeti and I'm from SEABIRD Educare. So actually it is easy to make simple mistakes in IELTS speaking that can cut your score. So in this video, I am not going to tell you what to do, but I am going to tell you what not to do to raise your score. So before we look at mistake number 1, make sure to hit that subscribe button. So alright, let's get started. Okay, let's start discussing with the speaking part 1, the introduction part. So in part 1 of speaking, you need to answer very straightforward questions like what you do, where you live, and what you think about everyday things. So first mistake is being too brief. So a very silly mistake that students usually make during the speaking test, they give their answers in just single word or a single phrase. So never give your answer very short, and also remember, never give your answer too long. So the mistake number 2 is using memorized answers. The first set of questions in part 1 are repeated. The most common questions are like, do you work or are you a student? Do you live in a house or an apartment? It's really good idea to practice these kind of questions before the test, but I never recommend you to memorize the answers of these questions. So just trust yourself, relax, and speak naturally. The mistake number 3 is adding in irrelevant memorized words. This is absolutely nonsense. So for example, if the examiner asks you a question like, do you like rain? So then you might use words like wet, drenched, so these kind of words. But if you use words that you are not familiar with, or you use the word that looks just fancy, but you use it incorrectly, so it may decrease your score for sure. Okay, now let's look at mistakes in part 2 to avoid. So the first mistake in part 2 that candidates make is going round and round in circles. This is one of the most common mistakes that candidates make. It is because they don't have any strategy. So they finish their topic in just 45 seconds, and then the next minute they just repeat themselves in going round and round in circles. So I really recommend you to use any strategy in part 2 topic. The mistake number 2 in part 2 is thinking you have made a mistake, then the examiner stops you. So if the examiner stops you, it's not because you have done something wrong. It's because you have reached your 2-minute mark. So if you are halfway through your sentence, so the examiner will ask you to stop, like by saying thank you. So don't let this upset you. So now look at the mistakes of part 3. The first mistake is thinking you can't ask the examiner to repeat the question. Typically the questions in part 3 are difficult because the examiner asks you to evaluate effectiveness, compare, categorize. So if you don't understand the question, so you can ask the examiner by saying, can you please repeat the question? So this is much better than speaking off the topic. So the mistake number 2 in part 3 is not giving thoughtful answers. Part 3 has been designed to take your ideas and language further. To express your thoughtful ideas, you need flexible grammar and less common vocabulary. So thank you very much. So if you are interested to take online classes, so you can visit our website or do let me know in the comments.